console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello, class, and welcome to On the Origin of Battlemechs Podcast, episode 44. Today we are talking about the Chameleon. I am your host, Brent Stewart McKee. My co-hosts today are...
I'm Joshua.
And I'm Chandler.
And today we're talking about the Chameleon, a 50-ton mech that almost all of you will have had some hands-on experience with in the training field down in Wing 5. So the Chameleon is a battle mech no matter what anyone says. Is it a good mech? Well, no. But technically, yes. I say technically because this is a battle mech that was not designed for combat. By that, I do not mean that it is a scout like the Locust or the Flea, but it is a battle mech designed for training. The most realistic training you can give. Importantly, teaching pilots about heat management, movement, and diverse tactics. The Chameleon first appeared in the early 2500s and has never seen a break in production during the Americivil War and Succession Wars. This is due to it being produced deep in the heart of Hesperus II, far away from any risk of raids. And any mech warrior who has received any sort of formal military training will likely have time in the cockpit of the Chameleon, as effectively every military academy in the Inner Sphere has at least one, and at least one unverified report of it being used by the clans for training purposes before we lost communication with the homeworlds. The story of the Chameleon becomes interesting in 3052 as Hesperus II shut down the line to retool to pursue the Night Sky design. A forward-thinking businesswoman recognized the opportunity and purchased the rights to produce the Chameleon under the company name JB Battlemechs. This was done to continue to support training material market, and as conflict was only on the rise, the training was only going to scale up, but also to produce combat models. The first combat model was seen in 3056. Pilots of the new models were able to use the confusion of it being designated a training mech to gain an advantage and score kills due to being underestimated. That is until the battle computers were updated. Speaking of software, all models have special software that will deactivate or constrain the machine's abilities. This was intended to teach and push the pilots to think critically and creatively. The 4B has its standard, but all subsequent models have the software as a opt-in feature at the pilot's discretion. The Chameleon has the design quirks of being easy to pilot.
I like its little antennas. It makes it look like a Pikachu.
I think the Chameleon is actually a really good-looking mech, and the BattleTech universe is interesting because there's a lot of mech warriors who apparently come out of these academies.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also see a lot of mech warriors who are noble trained, especially during the Succession Wars. So this line about just about every mech warrior worth his or her salt remembers the Chameleon feels almost like a bit of marketing speak. Because if you were trained by a nobleman or by a man-at-arms for your noble family, you probably weren't trained in a Chameleon. You were trained in whatever the family battle mech is.
Yeah, that is definitely logical, especially during the dark times when there weren't a whole lot of mechs around to practice with. You used what you could.
I do find the cockpit very interesting. It's very much a throw to like the Battlemaster style, where it's almost like it's a quarter circle of glass as the head, essentially.
Mm-hmm. No, just a good field of vision there.
Yeah.
I mean, it also has the vaguely human-esque profile that we saw with the Stinger, who is also noted for being used as a training model. A little less mobility with the head because, the cockpit is clearly mounted, but, I mean, piloting something that's 50 tons is going to give you a little more experience than something that's 20 tons.
Yeah, and then I like its movement profile. The jump jets, of course, are there to train pilots on how to jump a battle mech, but it's got 6 of them, which puts it in that 5+ bracket. Not quite 7, which is, again, that would make it just a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. The first model is the TRC-4B, and what is interesting to note is this is also listed as the CLN-4V, which is the designation of all the other models, like the 3-letter designation, but the 4B has the TRC denoting its training purposes. This guy has a movement of 696 and 2 machine guns in the center torso, 2 small lasers in the right torso, 2 small lasers in the left torso, a large laser in the right arm, and a medium laser in the right arm. It also has a medium laser in the left arm. It also has 10 single heat sinks, so clearly showing pilots how to manage that heat, because otherwise this is an easy bake-up.
Yeah, I also am extremely perplexed as a training mech Why doesn't it have any missile launchers?
Or ballistics of any sort, aside from the machine guns. Because, I mean, they are ballistic, but they barely count.
Yeah.
I can kind of understand not having ballistics because they're overweight, but missiles are, like, you put an LRM-5 on there or an SRM-2, and that's it. Either one of those is like one ton.
Mm-hmm.
I get the impression from the Chameleon that it's a lot of what it's trying to teach isn't gunnery skills, but more of situational awareness and paying attention to your heat.
Absolutely.
Which, with the ballistic weapons, isn't as much of an issue, but giving it a heavy laser loadout and only 10 heat sinks, it's demanding practically that they overheat. It's like, you better overheat this at least twice, and then you'll figure out how not to.
Yeah.
So help me, Blake, or Space Pope, or whatever you want to, curse to.
I get that. I just feel that you could achieve something similar, but trade your 4 small lasers for an LRM-5 and a ton of ammo so they can learn how to do indirect fire.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you'd have your lasers to help you build that heat and learn how to manage it. You'd have an LRM-5 to teach them how to use indirect fire, and you'd have machine guns to teach them anti-infantry tactics.
That's fair.
And I just think it would round out the training capabilities of this TRC 4B or CLN 4V.
Well, I mean, if they put it all in one model, they wouldn't have the opportunity to sell you a second one, right?
Yeah.
True. I still think you're probably better off teaching people in locuses, though.
Yeah. So, this guy was seen in 2510, and he has a battle value of 999 with a point value of 21, but probably not going to want to take this one on the battlefield. And then next up, we have the CLN-7V. This guy keeps the same movement profile of 696. It's got basically the same loadout as everything else. It's just not geared for training. It's just geared to actually shooting the other things. So I guess the biggest thing is the software change.
I think it bumps armor up as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, you do gain a little bit of armor, which is very nice for a 50-ton mech.
Yeah, you gain a full ton.
But how does it pay for that? How does it?
You lose a half a ton of machine gun ammo.
Ah.
And a small laser.
There it is, right, yes. Left torso only has 1 in this guy. I missed that on my first pass.
Yeah, I mean, this one's just, we're going to slap on some more armor so you don't die to, random Joe Schmo number 3 on the first pass. So at least you can try to kill them.
And I mean, that surprise you get on the first little bit for everyone thinking that you're a training mech will definitely help.
Yeah.
I do love the giant jetpack it has.
Oh yeah, that's just kind of like hiding behind the almost Pikachu antennas.
Yep.
I've noticed with a lot of the older mech designs that have are designed originally to have jump jets, have these jump packs, but you just never see them in the original art because of the way they've
positioned them,
situated them. Because I mean, no one wants to draw the back of a mech. Like, I get why, but at the same time, sometimes it would have been nice.
Which is funny because one tip I've heard a lot about painting your minis is make sure the back of it looks good, because that's where you're going to spend most of your time looking.
Oh, yeah.
It's not wrong. On painting tips, I would also suggest painting your mechs and all your units in something that will be nice to look at while it's on the table.
No neon pink.
Camouflage is cool and all, but you want to enjoy the way everything looks on the battlefield, so...
Mm-hmm. No, I tend to use the ceremonial paint jobs they use for most of my units. The one exception being the Falcon Guard for Clan Jade Falcon, because their camo pattern looks quite good and has the nice emerald green in there that makes it kind of pop. But back to the Chameleon. So the 7V has appeared first in 3056, and it has a battle value of 1042 with a point value of 24. We then come to the first model that is a little different, the 7W, first seen in 3058. This guy has the same movement profile of 696. It has an ER large laser in the right arm, a medium laser in the right arm, and a medium pulse laser in the left arm. And it has 10 double heat sinks, so able to handle that heat a heck of a lot better.
Feels undergunned, though.
A little bit, yeah. Also would like some indirect missiles, to round out the weapons, because right now it's just a direct energy platform, which is useful, but terrain can limit it.
It does also gain 2 tons of armor.
Yeah, for a 50-ton mech with its armor loadout and only having a standard, only in air quotes, having a standard engine, the ER large laser is pretty hefty for how much space you actually have left at that point. and it's able to sink all that heat and not go too over. I mean, if it runs and fires everything, I think it has one extra heat, which is pretty negligible. And then most of the time you're not going to fire everything anyway, just because of the way the range bands match up.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is a good point.
And it's got those 6 jump jets.
Yeah, it's got the jump jets. It's very mobile for a 50-tonner with that 696 profile. So I can see, like, this guy is
Feels like a heavy scout.
Yeah, he's a heavy scout, flanker, skirmisher. Unfortunately, roles that don't really translate well to the tabletop. But I could see it being a unit of these being very useful in something like Battle Force, where you actually do more screening and scouting operations.
So, this guy was seen in 3058, and he's got a battle value of 1243 and a point value of 29. And definitely an improvement over the souped-up training model. Next, we come to the 7Z or Z. Keeps the movement profile of 696. It's got 2 large lasers in the right arm and 1 ER large laser in the left arm. It's got 11 double heat sinks and an XL fusion engine to help pay for that weight.
And it also goes almost to maximum armor. It's 1 point under maximum.
This guy, I feel like he took on too many weapons.
Yeah, or too many long range, or like too many big weapons. I feel like those standard larges need to get trimmed out for, I don't know, a bunch of mediums or like 4 medium pulse lasers.
Yeah, this guy can definitely get hot fast.
Yeah, his weapon heat is 28.
28, yeah.
28. So he goes 6 over.
And that's without moving.
Yeah.
Again, you drop one of those for a missile system.
It screams it wants a missile system.
Yeah, that it's like this is all they had was like lasers or something.
Yeah.
It wants something that's not a laser. Or if it's if all you got's lasers, something that, you could bracket fight with it a little bit better than a bunch of large lasers.
Yeah. Having all 3 of its weapon systems in the same bracket incentivizes it not only to stay away, like this guy wants to keep its distance, but he's also going to overheat real quick if he's really pushing it. And I don't know, it's almost like you want to bracket for between 16 to 19 for the ER large laser, and then everything below that just the 2 large lasers. But that feels like a very narrow, weird bracket for that weight commitment for the ER, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like they should just replace both those standard large lasers with medium pulse lasers. Just slap 4 of those stupid things on there, and then you shoot the ER large laser, and then whenever they get in the good pulse laser range, you just switch that off and
make it a bracket
unload with the medium pulses.
Yeah, if you're going to keep it a laser boat, that's definitely a solid way to do it. Me, I'm thinking you put like an LRM-10 and an AC-2 on it, and you just double down on long-range poke.
Now you're just building a Centurion.
Yeah. That'd be an AC-5.
Well, this guy, as is, came out in 3058 and has a battle value of 1527 and a point value of 30. Then we come to the interesting model. This guy is neat. He is from the Phantoms experimental TRO. This is the Chameleon 7VQ, or QMech. And it has a Angel ECM suite in the center torso, an improved heavy medium laser clan in the left torso, a targeting computer clan in the left torso, a heavy PPC in the right arm, improved heavy medium laser clan in the right arm, a PPC capacitor in the right arm, and an improved heavy medium laser clan in the left arm. Keeps the movement profile of 696 and has 11 double heat sinks.
Heavy PPC with a PPC capacitor. Yeah, this guy really wants to head cap stuff.
Which makes sense.
I mean, this guy really, I think, is what we were just discussing. It has that bracket that it wants to use.
So, and little background on the name. Q ships were a development in World War I, where you took a merchant ship, you cut away some of its decks to install heavy guns, and then you built up the sides so it looked like a normal merchant ship. And the idea was when a U-boat would come along and surface to sink your merchant ship with its deck gun, you would drop away the fake sides and then kill it with your heavy cannons, and thus you would protect the convoy and lure enemy units to their death. Q ship, now we have this Q mech. It's disguised as a training mech, so it looks harmless, and then it suddenly reveals it has all this insane firepower and high tech and tries to kill you before you know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, speaking of high tech, those 3 improved heavy medium lasers, I don't know how the heck they got their hands on those. Those had only been out for 2 years and were still considered like experimental tech by the, Goliath Scorpions, which were not really a, inner sphere clan at any point. So I don't know how the heck they got their hands on that. And honestly, I think that would be a good story into itself, is just how the heck did they make this thing?
It is a story. And
Also terrifying.
Well, and how much of this Q-mech is Federated Sons propaganda?
yeah, well, I mean, it is from the Phantom TRO, which, of course, has all this really weird stuff in it. So apparently this thing has appeared randomly and is used to assassinate people.
Makes sense.
Again, rumored.
Yes, this is, again, a rumor, because this whole TRO is filled with effectively ghost stories. I think is that a good way to categorize these sort of things? Or is Bigfoot sighting a better descriptor?
I think Bigfoot sighting's a better descriptor. These are rumor mill mechs.
Yeah, this is the these are the stories that are shared around the campfire.
Yeah. Sing around the campfire and sing our campfire songs. Just the campfire songs murder you.
It is 3071, so that's during the jihad. So it could be a Word of Blake assassin going around trying to kill important members of house training staff, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, luckily for their victims, only 1 in 5 was actually killed. Most of the times they failed.
That's why I feel more like this is the kind of thing that it's passed around by recruits. This thing, yeah, have you heard about the Q-mech? Maybe it'll kill that. Right? And, they whisper it in the barracks, like, man, I wish that Chameleon would show up and kill such and such officer because I hate it.
Yeah. Well, this guy is definitely neat, and he has a battle value of 2105 and a point value of 37. I have no idea how I could ever use this thing, but I kind of want to shoehorn it into something somewhere because it seems super neat.
Bounty hunting. Tracking down an infamous bounty hunter, and you can't figure out who he is because he's in a chameleon.
This is the way.
Yeah, there you go. So next up we have our data dive, and we are going to look at the Lyran Commonwealth Part 2.
Wait, what about our notable pilots, Brent?
Sadly, we don't actually have any pilots to talk about in our pilot profiles because there doesn't appear to be any. The closest thing we have is the Q-mech pilot, which we just discussed briefly, and there is almost nothing known about them. It is almost all just what their mech can do and what it has been seen attempting to do. So, when last we talked about the Lyran Commonwealth, it had been consolidated by the efforts of Archon Robert Marsden. He had standardized the economy, centralized and built up the military, and ensured loyalty to himself by elevating individuals based on devotion instead of skill. As I said last time, what could go wrong? Well, what went wrong was Robert made a slip of the tongue at a social function, and that started a international incident. In 2395, he made the off-the-cuff remark that he would enjoy a magnum of champagne from the planet named Promised Land. His social generals initiated a military action to take the planet. By the time Robert learned of the operation, he was not in a position to stop it, and 10 regiments had been mobilized and already jumped away. The operation was a complete disaster, and all units were lost.
10 regiments were lost?
Yeah, it was a debacle and a half.
What were our losses? 10 regiments? 10 regiments?
The military command, instead of owning its mistakes or lack of judgment by its commanding officers, instead took the stance that it was, in fact, the Archon's fault for the doomed invasion. 3 short weeks later, after the news of the military debacle was released to the population, Robert was found dead. The official cause of death was listed as a massive coronary, but few believed the reports.
I'm still stuck on how do you lose 10 regiments on a single planet?
Angrily. Very angrily.
I mean, maybe they attacked it and it had 20.
They couldn't possibly have 20 regiments there. Who do they think they are? They think they have a planet. That's who they think they are.
The social generals. Now, we have mentioned and commented on the social generals, and specifically how the Lyrans are known to suffer from them. But what exactly are the social generals? And how did they start at all? In the early days of the Commonwealth, they were formed from a disparate group of individuals who were persons of importance, industrialists, economic titans, and many others. This was in reaction to the common problem that many isolated planets had developed their own social customs and etiquette, and when representatives arrived on planet, they would receive unacceptable hospitality or consideration. And when you have a system of governance and or economic system that is very beholden to the whims of a single individual, minor misunderstandings can derail years of hard work. And so the title of social general was granted to individuals deemed worthy, in air quotes, in order to standardize the system and give them a social signifier not unlike that of an ambassador. Soon after, they won or influenced the right for individuals to have their title passed down to their children, further cementing a stratified social system and opening the floodgate. As over time, the social generals emulated and demanded more military trappings. Some examples are uniforms and medals, ceremonies, and advisory positions to the military. This created a vicious cycle where the military generals fed on the high society lifestyle of the social generals, and the social generals wormed their way into the Lyran military-industrial complex and command structure. Eventually, in the 29th century, the title of social general would be abolished, but the damage had been done. To be part of the Lyran military now has the requirements of at least appearing to be an individual who enjoys the trappings of wealth as well as being educated in the arts. An example of how this system is reinforced is an excerpt from the Brandenburg Edicts of 2413, and that is Section 57, subgraph C, on the attendance of social functions. All senior officers are required to attend major military social functions to which they have been invited, except if the attendance interferes with their duty, their unit's function, poses a potential health risk, or if the officer has already attended 5 other such functions in the space of 4 weeks. Section 57, subgraph D, on the limits placed on attendance of social functions. All senior officers are limited to the attendance of just 2 social functions without invitation per month. Violators will be reported directly to their commanding officers, who will decide if punishment, which includes the forfeiture of 2 months' pay, is required. So, you can see how that would create a feedback loop.
I do find it interesting because even today in the modern military, there's still this sense of an officer and a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
And many officers are more social or more high society social than your enlisted ranks. Enlisted ranks go out and crash frat houses and have barracks drinking parties and whatever, and they socialize that way. But
they'll take over a bar.
yeah, but officers are much more likely to have connections because they're all college graduates and they're sometimes part of fraternities. So they you can't get away, even in the modern military, from a kind of social aspect to the officer class.
Mm-hmm.
So I just find it interesting that the Lyrans have kind of codified that.
Literally in their military manuals.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea in practice. It just, because when you have a giant starfaring nation with officers of many different cultural backgrounds, because there's all these diverse planets, you want them to mingle and you want them to develop working relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like it went too deep into the politicking.
Yeah, it overcorrected.
So weird.
So maybe Colonel Von Roars was actually a Draconis sleeper agent set up to bring down the Lyran general structure, because she was noted to having a major influence on the way the social generals worked out.
There you go.
My God. It all makes sense now.
Yeah. The slings and arrows of the arts. Shortly after the death of Robert Marsden, the Royal Arcturian Shakespeare players suddenly switched programming and replaced A Midsummer's Night Dream with Hamlet, a daring and bold move as attendance to the performances was a social necessity. Many of the generals attended the performance left in objection of the social critique the performers were voicing, but the performers were not alone in their concern, as the majority of the public feared the military appointing one of their own as Archon, or worse yet, simply forming a military junta. Luckily for all, the play was just the thing, or the movers and shakers understood the powder keg the Commonwealth was currently on, and so the military and the government moved to elevate Robert's brother, Alistair Marsden, to the position of Archon. Alistair was reluctant, as he had only served as a junior officer in the tank brigade, the father of the modern Commonwealth. After assurances, he accepted and was confirmed by the Estates General on November 10th, 2395. Alistair may have been a military pick, but he quickly showed that the military had little measure of the man, and he quickly formed an aggressive economic campaign, centralizing the economy even more to the point of practical and effective regional Lyran stock exchanges, and fostered a prosperous and beneficial trade agreement with the Terran hegemony. In 2398, news of the Capellan Confederation and Free World League war reached Alistair, and he recognized that it was a precursor for things to come. He immediately authorized a military buildup and reinforcement and upgrade of the units. This move completely caught the military off guard and led to many wonder what Alistair was planning. What Alistair was planning was planning. He surrounded himself with insightful and knowledgeable advisors over the years, a notable one being Katrina Steiner in 2399, and until 2407, that is what he did. He planned and he waited. His actions were soon seen as smart and forward-thinking, as for 9 years the neighbors of the Lyran Commonwealth entered into grandstanding and costly military campaigns that always threatened to spill over. During this time, Alistair and Katrina would become close and eventually marry on Tharkad in 2405. In January of 2407, the dragon reached its claws across the border and grasped at the planet along the internal border of the Tamar Compact and the Isle of Skye, striking hard and driving for the capital of Arcturus. This was a feint or diversion, as the Karita plan was not to take the Commonwealth capital, but to turn and seize the Commonwealth territory between the Strike Corridor and the Terran hegemony, using a second wave invasion, conquering the Federation of Skye for the Draconis Combine. The military command was at a loss to respond to the Karitan invasion and had to resort to a scorched earth policy in order to deny the invaders as much as possible. This, of course, was infuriating to the Archon, who could not understand how the generals with better equipment kept failing to the Karitan advance. In order to stop the invasion, Alistair dismissed the commanding staff and traveled to the combat theater, where he reformed the defense and was able to fight the invasion to a bloody and costly standstill on the planet of Morningside. With the invasion halted, but still in striking distance of the Commonwealth capital, Alistair moved the capital to the planet of Tharkad, and Tharkad City became the official capital in December of 2407. With the first invasion halted, Alistair looked to find a solution to the realm's problems. In a stroke of brilliance, he was able to put together that the dragon was planning and realized that he must strike to stop the second wave. He amassed an invasion force of his own and set out for the planet of Vega, where he found he was correct, and that he had the Draconis Combine with its pants down. As the Lyran air assets poured into the atmosphere and wreaked havoc on the unprepared forces on the ground, destroying large stockpiles of equipment and consumables, and establishing a beachhead. This is recorded as the first Commonwealth's large-scale victory. Sadly, this would not hold, as soon after the invasion of Vega, Alistair was killed in action on the planet of Menkent. This is where we will leave off today, with a realm at war, but no longer teetering on the brink, a population mourning the loss of their founding father, and a power vacuum.
Good old Lyrans. What do you mean I can't win with generals who are not great generals? But they have the best stuff. The best stuff. I gave them the fanciest. I gave them Mackies with gold plate. Yeah. Mechs don't exist yet, but I gave them gold plate.
That's like proto-reflective armor, right?
Yeah. It's shiny. It's so shiny the lasers bounce back.
Exactly.
Archimedes did it. They did it. Here we go.
Our sources for today are Sarna, Battletech Battlemech Manual, Master Unit List, Succession Wars TRO and Record Sheets, 3085 TRO and Record Sheets Unabridged, Experimental Phantoms, and Sourcebook House Steiner. We are supported by our Patreons at patreon.com/on the Origin of Battlemechs. Our social media on Twitter is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a dedicated channel on the Everything Battletech Discord. Feel free to stop by and say hi. If you have any questions, requests for topics, or wish to contact us, our email is ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, I encourage you to let your friends know about us and to leave a review. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro. Class dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
Peace out, mech warriors.
Stay safe out there.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
Oh, Craig.
Okay, Craig.
To Craig. I mean, no, I love you, Craig. Come back.
We'll try him for round 2. Moving on.